All right, folks, welcome to Opposition Territory here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world, 13 years strong. And we got a great show and discussion coming your way on Opposition Territory this week as we dive into the Dallas Cowboys and what this team now looks like after the NFL draft, how their offseason has been, what the NFL draft looked like for our guest who was there in Pittsburgh. We have got from bloggingtheboys.com. He's been a longtime contributor over there and a good friend of the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show. My friend David Howman, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great. I'm on cloud nine since that draft. It was a great time to be a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Dude, yeah, absolutely, man. We're going to get into it. Look, I mean, we're going to get into the fact that the Dallas Cowboys had a really good draft. I mean, look, I'm going to be objective about it. You look at what the Cowboys did. Each pick actually really seemed like a really great pick for the team as they're moving forward, certain rebuild aspects of the team. We're going to get into that, but you were at the draft, David. You were there. You were in Pittsburgh. You got to experience not only what it was like hearing all the picks, but just what the overall NFL experience was. And I think every year gets bigger, gets better, new things to do, places to see and visit with regard to whatever city they're in and the draft itself. Tell us a little bit about it and your thoughts on covering the NFL draft out there, bloggingtheboys.com, and just the overall experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. This was the first draft I've ever been to. I didn't really know what to expect. I had a great time. I told you right before we hopped on, probably the last time I'll ever actually do it, just because it's a lot on the legs, the knees and toes.
Yeah, we're getting a little older, aren't we, my friend?
Yeah, it was. I don't think I could handle that again, but it was a great experience. It was a really good time.
Yeah.
I think the city of Pittsburgh, from people that I spoke to while I was there that live in Pittsburgh, they were talking about they have been planning for this for 2 years since they found out it was coming to Pittsburgh. The Pennsylvania governor was actually out there at the draft all 3 days. He spoke publicly about there were revitalization projects that went down at Point State Park and other areas where the draft was held that were already in the works, but they ended up getting fast-tracked because of the draft. And so it was really cool to see not only just the structure and the organization of this actual event, but also Pittsburgh is going to be better for it now as well. These things they made last after the draft. So it was a big event for the city. And it was very well run. Traffic was not bad considering there were almost 1 million people there, which broke a record. We were able to get to the draft each day, reasonably on time. There were lines we had to wait in to do things. I got to kick an extra point on Heinz Field.
Oh, I saw that. You were getting ribbed too, man. You were getting ribbed. I saw your Instagram story.
Yeah, I had my Cowboy hat on, my Cowboys jersey. I don't know if you could see it in the video, but I was wearing Cowboy boots too. So
I saw.
That's my excuse for not making it, but I got the amount of air I wanted. I had the distance. I just hooked it a little bit to the right. So it was.
Were those Eagles fans, or were they Pittsburgh Steelers fans that were ribbing you and giving you a hard time?
Steelers fans.
Yeah.
And this was before the Mekhi Lemon drama, so
yes,
I don't know what it would have been after.
Oh my God! Well, dude, I'm glad you had a great time. I remember when the draft was in Philadelphia. I think that was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been 16. Anyway. It all meshes together, but just it wasn't just the excitement, but you talked about just how, and I'm not going to get into some weird government type of stuff, but how a huge event can just trickle out into the community and affect other aspects of the community in a very positive way. That's what happens with the NFL draft, like the NFL or not. And a lot of us, there are certain aspects of the NFL in terms of their operations that we don't necessarily care for, but when they do the draft, they absolutely do it right. So I'm glad you were able to bring that perspective. Let's now get into the Dallas Cowboys, okay? And what they did during this draft, man. Because here in Opposition Territory, when we get into various teams around the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, we want to talk about how teams are building, what they may be doing different, to give some insights on that. And look, make no mistake about it, the Dallas Cowboys were the NFL's worst defense last season. And they went from being that bottom of the basement worst defense in the league to now having the number one safety prospect heading into this 2026 season. I mean, I was really surprised that Caleb Downs didn't go to the Giants. And it seems that this pick, David, was really a steal for the Cowboys in a lot of ways. Are you seeing Caleb Downs, I'm wondering, maybe as a Darren Woodson, maybe a Derwin James type safety? Because if so, my gosh, he is going to be a tremendous asset for years to come. How are you looking at this pick?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Darren Woodson, who actually is funny. I brought his jersey to wear on the second day because Darren Woodson was a second-round pick.
Yeah.
And then it just worked out that we got the next Darren Woodson.
Yes.
So, it worked out perfectly. Of course, Darren Woodson also went to my alma mater, Arizona State. So it was really nice, synergy there. But the moment Christian Parker got hired in Dallas, which again, thank you for that, coming from Philly.
Yep, I know.
The moment he got hired, the number one thing he has been saying is his most important position is that nickel role. It's a hybrid role, needs to be able to fit the run, needs to be able to play the pass, needs to be around the action all the time. Cooper DeJean filled that role, and they kind of tailored it around his strengths, of course, in Philly. But Cooper DeJean's done that. Derwin James has been that in the past for the Chargers in a similar type of scheme. And Christian Parker said, we need somebody who can fill that role.
Yeah.
And, they have Deron Bland, who's played in the slot before, but he's also had some injury history. They signed Jalen Thompson, who has done that role in Arizona, but is better as a traditional safety. Caleb Downs is the guy. And they said as much in the press conference. Like, he is going to be our nickel. He is going to do pretty much everything for us. They said he won't be the green dot guy because typically they'll have the linebacker do that, but Caleb Downs will be responsible for kind of aligning the secondary and being the quarterback of the defense in a lot of ways. And having him fall to them was it was a journey in and of itself, but to be there live for it without like picks getting tipped, on the broadcast, things like that. I thought for sure the Giants were taking him at 10. And when they announced Francis Mauigoa, I was celebrating more than the Giants fans that were in attendance because I was like, there we go, we got our guy.
It's real. It's amazing, I think, what the Cowboys did in this draft. And again, I'm taking off my Eagles fandom hat because when you look at how the Cowboys handled this draft to help transform the defense, I think it's pretty impressive. And I hate saying that. I hate saying that about an NFC division rival. 5 defensive players, and they traded for linebacker D. Winters to basically retool much of everything with this new defense, with their new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker. As you mentioned, 3 defensive ends taken and pass rushers, 2 secondary pieces. So, David, I'm wondering, what's the level of expectation now that this transformation here in 2026 can do for this defense to kind of get them out of the basement with the help of these draft picks? And granted, maybe not all these draft picks are going to be starters from day one, but what's the expectation now of where this defense can potentially go?
Yeah, I mean, we're not even a week out from the draft yet, so we're all still trying to pump the brakes on the hopium.
Right.
It was a very exciting draft, and I think a lot of us right now are like, could be a top 10 defense, but I think the reality is probably not going to be that level, at least not to start. You've just got a whole lot of new pieces, all the draft picks, Christian Parker and his defensive staff, and then pieces that they added in free agency. So I expect it'll probably take a little bit of time to actually come together. But, I mean, middle of the league in terms of defense is probably a realistic hope for year one. Because, I mean, you never know. Like Caleb Downs, some people had him as the top prospect in the entire draft. Certainly the number one defensive back. But, like, how is he going to adjust to the NFL? You don't know until you actually see him out there. Yeah. He's going to have a lot on his plate. Malachi Lawrence, also really, really good player. A lot of people said he has the highest upside of any edge rusher in this class, but also, high upside, but what's he going to do as a rookie? He's not going to, with Rashawn Gary, with Donovan Ezeraku, he's not going to be counted on to play every single snap, but yeah, you wonder what you're going to get year one. So I think at the very least, they've raised the floor of this defense considerably. Getting D. Winters as a linebacker for a 5th-round pick is tremendous value in and of itself, but then he slots in as a starter next to DeMarvion Overshone. Jayshon Barham, who's one of the edge players they took, they actually said they plan to play him at linebacker, but in a similar role to how the Eagles have used Zach Bond. So being able to walk him up to the line of scrimmage, threaten that offensive line. He can drop back in coverage, which he did at Michigan. He can rush the passer, which he did at Michigan. So they found hybrid players, and they found guys that they can deploy in a few different areas, which is exactly what Christian Parker was looking for. So really at this point, it just comes down to, is the hype on Christian Parker legitimate? Because they've given him everything that he has asked for at this point.
Right.
Now it's, can you actually go out there and do it?
Yeah. But I think it's important to realize too, you got to develop some of these guys. I mean, it's going to take some time. That transformational time from the college ranks to the NFL. I think sometimes us fans, even us fans that get into the thick of it, sometimes forget that, especially when it comes to defensive backs, man, that transition can take a couple years for them to get their feet really wet and to absorb what their defensive coordinators want. So look, folks, we are going to take a break here. David, again, bloggingtheboys.com, great site, great content for Dallas Cowboys, storylines, and what you are all following over there. Let everybody know where they can follow you on the show, on the socials, if they want to.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at _DH44_. I'm on Blue Sky at DH44. Didn't have to put the underscores on that one. And then, I don't really use my Instagram, but it's just my first and last name. I've got videos out there from the draft. So if you want to see all that stuff, you want to see me in the cowboy hat and everything, go check that out as well.
Absolutely. Again, I loved when you were kicking the field goal in your cowboy boots. Oh, that was fantastic. And when you were getting booed, I think I ended up liking it. So, folks, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we got more Dallas Cowboys talk and how this draft will affect the team in the future. Stick with us. All right, we're back with our good buddy David Howman from bloggingtheboys.com. And as we are moving along talking about the NFL draft and specifically how the Cowboys are trying to now team build that much more for the future due to the draft, I think the only offensive players that they took were offensive tackle Drew Shelton from Penn State. Oh, man. Tore my heart out when that pick happened. It happens all the time. I mean, anyway, I can't get into it. It really is. The amount of Penn State players that are taken by NFC East teams, that never ceases to amaze me. But with their last pick in the 7th round, they took wide receiver Anthony Smith from East Carolina. What do you think that these offensive picks, David, will do? I should say, I guess, what do you think of these picks? And do you think the Cowboys front office should have concentrated more on maybe bringing in offensive players with this draft than solely really concentrating the majority of the team building on the defense? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, going in, we knew that it was going to be a defense-heavy draft just because the defense was so bad last year and the offense was pretty darn good last year.
Yeah.
And, the receiver position was something that I said was kind of a sneaky need going into this draft. They needed to come out with somebody because we know CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, provided he signs the tag, which we're still waiting on.
Right. Yep.
Those are your two guys. But wide receiver 3, they use Kavontae Turpin, but he's not their full-time wide receiver 3. Last year, he kind of split with Jalen Tolbert, who's now with the Dolphins. Ryan Flanoy came on towards the end of the year. But again, we haven't seen him in that role full-time. When they took Anthony Smith, I'll admit I was like, don't know much about him. But once I looked into him, though, I mean, the guy has legitimate SIA speed. He ran a 4.440 at the combine. He ran a little bit faster at his pro day. His 10-yard split was in the 98th percentile of receivers. Has had some issues with drops at Eastern Carolina, but you can't teach speed. You can get somebody on the jugs machine, teach them how to catch and be more consistent there. So I like it as a 7th round flyer. I don't know what he'll contribute as a rookie. My guess is he's probably, that last receiver spot probably will be an inactive for most of the year.
Yeah.
But I like betting on those traits. As for Shelton, I think that was a bigger need was depth at the offensive tackle position, because they don't really, like, Tyler Guyton has shown flashes at left tackle, but he hasn't done enough to make us all think we've got that on lock. Terrence Steele is also has been iffy at times. Great run blocker, questionable pass protector. He's also approaching 30, so it's kind of in that territory of what do you have after that. And Penn State does really, really good with their tackles. Shelton is one of the more athletic tackles in this draft. It's funny because the Cowboys offensive line coach, Connor Riley, was at Kansas State for a while before going to the Cowboys. He tried to recruit Shelton coming out of high school, and then obviously he went to Penn State. And so on the phone call when they drafted him, they put Connor Riley on, and he's talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, I finally got you." And Shelton laughs, and he goes, "Yeah, I can't run anymore."
You can't run fast anymore. But he is athletic. I mean, he really is. It's incredible. And I think that, when you look at where the Cowboys need to go in the future, you're right. I mean, like we saw, defense needed to be a priority. Offense, they needed that offensive line depth. I mean, when you talked about Steele, I always love seeing him out there because there's, things are a little iffy every now and again with his blocking. But look, no draft is perfect. And I was talking about it on our last podcast, specifically about the Eagles draft. And there's always some head scratchers. We talked about it before we saw the Eagles before we got on. We talked about the Eagles taking a quarterback, which I was just like, oh my gosh, why are we doing this when they have Andy Dalton and Tanner McKee as backups? But I'm not sure we actually saw any head scratching moments with the Dallas Cowboys draft here in 2026. What are your thoughts on that, David? I mean, did the Cowboys front office have a head scratching moment for you, or did you sit back and say, you know what? Yeah, this is just great. All of it just great. No head scratchers.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, yeah, it was like that. And, honestly, a lot of it, and maybe this was just me, but like once the Cowboys got Caleb Downs, it kind of felt like the rest of it doesn't really matter.
Weight lifted off the shoulders, right? Yeah.
Like Caleb Downs was like the dream fit for this team. And from the moment that Cowboys fans started getting excited about Caleb Downs, it became clear, no way he's falling to 12. And technically he didn't, because they moved up to get him at 11. But the fact that they actually got him and only gave up 2 5th-round picks to move up and get him, and then later when they traded down with the Eagles, they got 2 4th-round picks. So essentially they moved up one spot, and in the process got their guy and also upgraded their 5th-round picks to 4th-round picks.
Yeah.
So just from a process standpoint, the draft was phenomenal. I think the players that they got were also really good. And I think if you're looking for like a head scratcher pick, it would probably have to be LT Overton, the edge guy they got out of Alabama. According to a lot of the consensus boards, he was a bit of a reach. LT Overton, of course, Alabama used him mostly in like a rotational role. He moved all the way around that defensive line. Going into his last year, he became a starter, and a lot of people thought, based on his previous tape, he's going to play himself into a 2nd-round player, maybe end of the 1st round. Didn't quite happen, but they got him there in the 4th round, near the end of the 4th round. And, considering they didn't have any picks in the 5th round, any picks in the 6th round, I don't hate taking a little bit of a reach on a guy like that who's shown some ability, he's shown some versatility on the defensive line. And that was a pick that, again, some people said it was a little bit of a reach, but not nearly enough to be upset about, especially at the end of the 4th round.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be counted on to be a starter. If all he gives you is a good depth piece that can come in and play, 10, 15 snaps a game and not embarrass you, then you've gotten good value out of that pick. So that's probably the closest that we got to any head scratching moves, but nothing that anybody was up in arms over.
I mean, it makes sense. Cowboys get Caleb Downs. It's a weight lifted off everybody's shoulders. Right. I can't believe the Giants. They're such idiots. I just seriously, they didn't take him. I was like, Caleb Downs is right there, and you didn't take. What a bunch of idiots that. Anyway, I don't mean to be unkind. Anyway, buddy, before I let you go, the Cowboys made a move. This doesn't really deal with the draft, but the offseason, you mentioned the wide receiver position being that kind of sneaky position that you think needed to be addressed a little bit more and possibly going to need to be addressed by the team in the future. They recently acquired Marcus Valdez-Scantling. MVS, as most folks know him, on a 1-year deal. I mean, this kind of feels like how the Eagles signed Hollywood Brown to a 1-year deal. Guys kind of on the tail end of their career. What more can we possibly get from them? When it comes to Marcus Valdes-Scantling, what do you see his role possibly being heading into this 2026 season?
I mean, honestly, no idea.
Okay.
That move kind of came out of nowhere. I'm honestly a little skeptical that he even makes the roster, but this does feel like kind of, hey, this guy, he's been around the NFL for a while. I can't necessarily say he's caught a lot of passes because there's been a lot of times he hasn't.
Yeah.
But he's experienced, he's seasoned, he's huge, so that's always a good thing. It feels like we'll bring him in on a cheap team-friendly deal if he's able to be a player for us. Having him and Pickens on the outside with their size and CeeDee Lamb in the slot, that can definitely stress defenses even more than it already did last year. But I also think, I mentioned Ryan Flanoy, that the team really likes him. There's a lot of optimism around him. There's just that uncertainty of, like, there's only been a handful of games where he's played starter level snaps. And so it's in the past, the Cowboys have kind of gotten themselves in trouble with just expecting that these guys will naturally step into that next role.
Yeah.
And hasn't quite worked out sometimes. And I like that they're taking this approach now of saying, like, we want to give Ryan Flanoy that chance, but we also want a plan if he's not ready for that role. Marcus Valdes-Scantling gives you at least a higher floor, at least he's a known commodity. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a preseason cut.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, my friend, it was great talking to you. A great conversation as always. Again, folks, David Howman, bloggingtheboys.com. Get your socials out there again so folks can follow you if they want.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at _DH44_. Blue Sky at DH44, and then Instagram if you want to see me almost make a field goal on Heinz Field at David Howman, just my first and last name. Always a good time coming on the show, especially a good time after the Caleb Downs draft. Nothing can bring me down right now. We'll check back again in September.
But I think I got a little misty-eyed when they got the pick. I'm not kidding. I'm thinking, oh man, this guy could be a problem. This guy could be a problem for the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, let's do this again, my friend, at some point in the future. I'd love to have you on the show again.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to be back.